Hey guys, it's Courtney from Cosmic Clarity Astrology. I'm super excited to bring you this brand new video on astrology of health. We're basically going to look at all of the signs and planets and their association with different parts of the body and how that can relate to certain common illnesses related to those body parts. If you want a medical astrology reading, then go ahead and book one. I will put it in the description box down below, or you can find it at cosmicclarityastrology.com. So let's go ahead and dive in. So we first start off with Aries and Mars. So Mars is the planet that rules Aries. And Aries and Mars rule over the head and the adrenals. This is not an exhaustive list of all the body parts that this sign rules, but these are the main ones that I see most commonly activated. So in this chart on the right, we can see this individual has their moon in Aries, and it's also squaring Mars, which is on the south node. Mars on the south node is a debilitating force on Mars. It makes it a weakened Mars. And wherever we have our moon sign is going to be a little bit more sensitive or susceptible because the moon is one of our primary health planets. So this is an example of a chart of somebody who has gotten really bad chronic migraines for many years and often associated with PMS and other kind of hormonal symptoms, likely because Mars is in Cancer, which rules over our cycle as women. So those who have a kind of dysfunctional moon or dysfunctional Mars in their chart might have adrenal exhaustion, might get headaches or inflammation, and these types of ailments. So Taurus and Venus. Venus rules over Taurus. This is going to rule over the throat and the thyroid. So obviously the thyroid is super important for our hormonal regulation. And this is a chart of an individual with both the sun and moon in Taurus. And this person has Hashimoto's, and that is where the body basically attacks the thyroid cells and it creates an underactive thyroid and kind of swollen neck. So this is a clear example of having your moon in a particular sign. That in and of itself can make you susceptible to issues related to that sign's nature. And then in this chart in particular, they have Chiron squaring the moon, which is what weakens the moon enough to the point to have an ailment that involves the thyroid. So this is, the next slide is Gemini, or the planet that rules over it, which is Mercury. Gemini rules over the lungs and the nervous system. It is an air sign. If you know Geminis, they're thinking a lot, and that's why they can have an easily kind of dysregulated nervous system. They can tend to be a little bit anxious, or they can have some type of breathing condition. I have a Gemini sun, and I grew up with asthma and always getting bronchitis and things like that. This is a chart of Billie Eilish. She has her Mercury, again, Mercury rules over Gemini. She has her Mercury conjunct Chiron. You'll notice a lot of these examples involve Chiron because Chiron is an asteroid of ill health and often brings some type of chronic illness or some type of psychological or physical imbalance in the body. So in this chart, it's affecting her Mercury, which again rules over the nervous system, and Billie Eilish has Tourette's, which is a neurological disorder. So you can see how that's interfering with her body. Up next, we have Cancer and the moon. So again, the moon rules over Cancer, and Cancer rules over all of the feminine body parts. So like I mentioned, our cycle, our uterus, our breasts, for example, and it also rules over quite a bit of hormonal function along with Libra. And very importantly, it rules over the stomach. So I usually see people who have some kind of stomach issues going on. They'll usually have something involving Cancer or Virgo. This is a chart of an individual with Saturn on their moon, and they're both in Cancer. Saturn is a malefic, so Saturn and Mars are both malefics, and when we see them interacting with a planet, especially the moon, then we know that there's likely going to be some kind of health issue going on there. And then on top of that, this person's moon in Cancer is squaring Chiron. And I mentioned Chiron is involved in a lot of these examples where people are having some kind of issue in their physical body. So this person has kind of a double whammy because Chiron brings ill health and Saturn often does the same. And so this person actually developed breast cancer and had to get a double mastectomy. So up next we have Leo, or the sun. The sun rules over Leo. So this is actually my chart. Don't look too carefully. But Leo rules over the heart and over the spine. And you can see here that I have the sun next to the south node. Again, the south node is a diminishing force. So whenever we have a planet touching it, we can automatically assume that whatever that planet is ruling or the sign that it's in is going to have some type of issue at some point, or susceptibility, I should say. Also in my chart, I have Mars in Leo and then next to Chiron in Leo. Again, Chiron brings ailments and issues. We always see these things over and over again. So Chiron is the thing that I first look at when somebody comes to me in a medical reading and they're wondering, when is this issue going to go away? 9 times out of 10, it's a Chiron transit causing it. So I look to see when Chiron is going to be leaving. In my chart, you can see I have quite a bit of dysfunction in the Leo sun area, and I have scoliosis. I was born with scoliosis to the point where I had to have rods, Harrington rods, put into my back and straightening out my spine. So scoliosis is when you have that kind of S in your spine. So you can see, again, how exact these things tend to be. So once you know kind of what to look for in terms of kind of dysfunction and markers like that in your chart, then you know what areas are much more likely to be imbalanced. Up next, we have Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. And Mercury, or Virgo, is in charge of the small intestine and the pancreas. So very commonly, these individuals will have a lot of food intolerances. Usually people who have like Saturn in Virgo. In this case, this is Zoe Deschanel. She has both malefics, Saturn and Mars, in Virgo and retrograde. So basically, whenever we see, especially Saturn, but Saturn and Mars, both malefics, I'll just say, whatever sign they're in, you're always likely to have just a little bit more issue with that planet, unless it's doing really well in the chart. But typically, I'll look at those planets to see the problem. So Zoe has both malefics in Virgo, and this makes her susceptible to, again, some kind of food intolerance. And in this case, she actually has celiac disease, which is a gluten intolerance, or maybe a little bit more severe than that. But you can expect those who have a lot of Virgo to be maybe picky eaters or more sensitive eaters. And you should not make fun of them for not eating certain foods or for being picky, because usually that's because their body knows that they don't operate well with that kind of food. Up next, we have Libra, or Venus. So Venus, again, rules over Libra. And Libra rules over the kidneys and the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is responsible for our hormones. And I oftentimes will see somebody's chart when they have a wounded Venus, a dysfunctional Venus, which we can see here, a Venus in Virgo, which is a sign it doesn't like to be in. It's also in the 12th house, which 12th and the 6th and the 8th house tend to be challenging houses for health, especially the 6th. And it's also conjunct Chiron. We keep mentioning that planets next to Chiron or making a square opposition to Chiron, they are usually struggling in some way. So this individual's Venus is struggling a lot, and they have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So they have a disruption to their hormonal balance, and this can cause kind of irregular periods and things of that nature. So again, you can see if somebody has something going on with their hormones, they're probably going to have something going on with their Libra placements or Venus or their moon or Cancer and that type of thing. Up next, we have Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars in traditional astrology, or Pluto in modern astrology. I definitely look at Pluto when it comes to things Scorpio related with health. Normally, traditional astrologers wouldn't do that, but when it comes to health, absolutely look at the modern rulers. So Scorpio is in charge of the colon, basically the whole process of excretion out of the body, even sweating, as well as the reproductive organs. So this is an individual who has both their sun and Mars in Scorpio, and it's actually combust, which I'm not going to get into, but I have a whole video on planets combust the sun, and I would definitely recommend checking that out. But combustion is a sign of some kind of dysfunction or weakness, just like a planet being conjunct the South Node or conjunct Chiron or conjunct Saturn or Mars. Those are all dysfunctions. So this individual has double Scorpio planets. They also have Mars, which again rules Scorpio, and Pluto in Scorpio, all in this sign, and they have irritable bowel syndrome. So they have had kind of chronic issues with the process of excretion. Let's just say that. Okay, up next we have Sagittarius. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Sagittarius and Jupiter are in charge of the hips and the thigh region, as well as the sciatic nerve. And this is Adele's chart. She has her moon in Sagittarius. It's also opposite Chiron. Would you look at that? 9 times out of 10, there's something involving Chiron going on. So yes, this person has their moon opposite Chiron, moon in Sagittarius, and they have sciatica. So Adele has, I think she's even had to cancel concerts. Maybe she hasn't, but I know she's had a lot of issues backstage, at least. I don't know if it's affected her performance. So definitely interesting that you can see that you're predisposed to these types of things. Capricorn or Saturn. So Capricorn or Saturn rule over the bones, the teeth, the skeletal system, the gallbladder, the skin as well. And usually when you have some kind of aging issue or arthritis or something going on with the bones, you will probably have something with Capricorn involved. My moon is in Capricorn. As I mentioned, the moon is a very important planet for our health. So I have had issues with my teeth. I have had scoliosis. I have, pain in my bones all the time. So it's, again, super helpful to know your birth chart and to understand these things. So this is Franklin D. Roosevelt's chart. He actually has Saturn, which again rules over Capricorn, making a square to his Venus and his sun. And Saturn square the sun doesn't have to be this negative. I've seen a bunch of charts who have Saturn squaring the sun. I think his is a little bit worse because he also has Neptune here and he has Chiron here. All of these making a square to his sun. So he has kind of a complicated story. So this is quite extreme. But Franklin D. Roosevelt was paralyzed from polio. And he actually didn't discover this until, his late 30s. So he was living his normal life after getting sick as a child, and then eventually developed a paralysis from the waist down, and it was never fully recovered. So that can be representation of Saturn interacting with the sun. But again, it's more complicated than that because of it involving Chiron and Neptune. So up next we have Aquarius. Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn in traditional astrology. In modern astrology, it's ruled by Uranus, so I will look at both. Aquarius is a sign, or these, Saturn and Uranus are planets that can be in charge of the calves or the ankles, circulation, and oxygenation of the blood. So this is a chart of Lord Byron. He has a ton of planets in Aquarius. You can see, again, he has the malefic Saturn in Aquarius, and it's conjunct his Venus, and it's also making this quincunx to his moon and whatnot. He has quite a bit going on here, but his moon is also conjunct Uranus. And I mentioned Uranus rules over Aquarius in modern astrology. So he has Saturn in Aquarius and then Uranus on the moon. So I'm basically trying to say there's a repeating pattern here that really emphasizes these Aquarius related body parts. And this is somebody who was born with a club foot, which is basically a shortened Achilles tendon. So the foot is kind of bent sideways. So this is actually an issue with the ankle or with the Achilles, which is an Aquarius ruled topic. And again, we can see he's susceptible to that because of this dominant Uranus on his health planet, the moon, and because Saturn the ruler of Aquarius, is also in the sign of Aquarius. And Saturn's a malefic. Hopefully this is making sense. I know this is kind of taking like previous knowledge into account, but I might teach a course on this one day. So if you're interested, let me know in the comments below. The last one is Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in traditional astrology or Neptune in modern astrology. So Pisces is in charge of the immune system and the feet. So you can also look at Jupiter and Neptune a little bit for those things. But it's not so cut and dry, this crossover between planets and signs. So keep that in mind. So this is actually, before I go into this chart, let me mention that I have Saturn in Pisces. And again, Saturn's a malefic, so it can bring challenges to the planet that it's in. So my feet hurt all the time. Actually, I was a kid and I would be walking around Disney World or the mall or wherever. And after just a couple of hours, I couldn't stand it because my feet would hurt so bad. I think this has, a relationship with my spine and the imbalance there and the way I walked, but my feet still hurt to this day when I walk a long time. So you can see, again, wherever you have Saturn, you're just a little bit more susceptible. And recently, my brother has Saturn in Aquarius. Again, Aquarius rules the ankle. My brother just experienced a few months ago a difficult full moon that involved Chiron, and Chiron can bring physical ailments, and he ended up breaking his ankle because it was aspecting his Saturn in Aquarius. So you can predict even when these physical ailments are likely to occur. Anyway, so this is Lady Gaga's chart. She has her sun making a square to Neptune, and again, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. And so we can see in her chart, she is more susceptible to issues with her immune system. And I can see so often individuals with the sun aspecting Neptune, sun conjunct Neptune, opposing or squaring Neptune, are very susceptible to immune issues, in particular autoimmune issues, where their body kind of attacks itself, or where they have some type of susceptibility to like infection or like Lyme disease. Neptune is really commonly involved in undiagnosable illnesses. So things that doctors don't fully understand but tend to have kind of a chronic nature. And usually they lead to things like leaky gut or being really tired or fatigued, or just kind of like achy, which are all symptoms of fibromyalgia. So I just think it's super interesting that these things are kind of like hit the nail on the head all the time here. Additional notes, Mars can also be involved in the immune defense system. And so when we have kind of Neptune and Mars, which are both in charge of that together and squaring the sun, we can see that there is a complicated relationship with the overall vitality of the immune system and our ability to kind of sort out what is foreign and should be attacked versus what is kind of healthy and part of our body. So again, if you have something going on with the sun and Neptune, you are a little bit more susceptible to these things, or things like addiction. There are so many I could really go on and on with this whole presentation, but I am going to wrap it up here because I think I might share more information on this at a later date or teach something around this. Or if you want me to do it for you, if you want a medical astrology reading and you want to understand, what is maybe going on behind the scenes or behind what is obvious around your health issues, especially if they're confusing and they involve Neptune and they've been misdiagnosed, or if you want to understand timing around your medical issues. I'm not a doctor, I should just preface that, but I can help with the astrology portion of things. And if you want a reading from me, you can check that out at cosmicclarity.astrology.com, or I will link it in my description box down below. I hope that you enjoyed this video, you guys. If you notice any themes here for yourself, particularly if you have something going on with your Chiron or your moon or your Saturn, and you notice that there's a correlation between the sign and your physical ailments, drop it in the comments down below. Share your experiences so we can all learn from each other. And I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and have a beautiful day. Bye.